Thank you for coming. My name is Lois Yamauchi, and I'm the president of Parents for Both attended public education. And I also graduated from Kalani High School. Yay, Falcons. Before we begin, I want to recognize the other Parents for Public School members in the audience. So there are 750 of us across the state. If you're a Parents for Public School member currently, could you wave your hand so people see who you are? Okay, great. And we're looking for others, so please consider becoming a member. It doesn't cost anything. Parents for Public Schools of Hawaii is a 6-year-old organization. And as I said, we're statewide, so we're trying to reach out as much as we can, but we're mostly volunteers. So today's presentation is on supporting family engagement and in school regarding practices and policies. What we're hoping to cover today is to kind of go over who we are, how we came to be, some of our activities to date, and then our reaction. We were asked to give a reaction to the governor's blueprint for education and also to the DOE strategic plan. Then we're hoping we have questions, so we're trying to keep on time. We have a timekeeper so that you can ask your questions and provide comments to us. So some of you may remember 2009, the Furlough Friday crisis, and this is our humble beginnings. Many of us met at these protests as parents of children who were furloughed on Friday, and we met out and picketing, and then many of us met in the governor's office. So there we were in 2009, and we were really shocked that when we realized that the family voice, the voice of the people for whom education is supposed to be serving, was not being heard and was being left out of the conversation regarding public decisions regarding public education. So we, after that crisis was somewhat resolved for the children at least, we decided that we would stay together. Previously, we were called Save Our Schools Hawaii, SOS, so you might remember us in the news. And then we decided to be more legitimate and to organize as a nonprofit organization. So we looked around and we saw that there was a national organization that could meet our needs. The National Parents for Public Schools is a 26-year-old organization with 17 chapters in 13 states. And we're the only chapter that is statewide because the chapters are organized by district. And the organization, the national organization, focuses on mobilizing, educating, and engaging families of public school students. So we felt this grassroots organization that really lets us do whatever we want and also is very supportive in their resources and support was a good way to continue. So we applied for and were accepted as the Hawaii State chapter of Parents for Public Schools. And here you can see our mission, which involves engaging parents, students, and community members across the state in supporting public education. And we do this through effective communication between families, community members, and schools, greater awareness of educational policies and practices, community involvement in education and decision making. So that was the part that we felt was lacking in the Furlough Friday decision. And then also accurate media representation of public education. We felt that public schools often are represented as just negative in the media. So now I'm gonna turn over the mic to some of my colleagues in Parents for Public Schools to discuss how we meet the mission through our various activities. each person will just introduce themselves. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Clare Hanusz. I am a board member of Parents for Public Schools, a former member of Save Our Schools Hawaii, and I have 2 kids in the public school system, a sophomore at Kaiser and an 8th grader at U Valley. The Parent Ambassador Program was designed really to provide an opportunity for parents, and when we say parents, I know the organization is called Parents for Public Schools, but it's not in any way limited to parents. I was just talking to a couple of collegettes, women at our table, future teachers. I mean, anyone who cares about public education, we invite you to become a member or involved in any way with Parents for Public Schools. It's kind of, the name sounds a little bit more limited than we actually are. But the Ambassador Program is a way for us to get the word out statewide for what Parents for Public Schools does. It's kind of school by school. And it's also an opportunity for individuals to become more involved with the organization, but maybe who can't be board members for different reasons, or maybe live on a neighbor island and aren't able to come into meetings, although we do what we can to try to make meetings accessible and remote and meet the challenges of our island geography. So we have currently ambassadors at schools on Hawaii Island, Maui, and Oahu. We're looking to expand and try to get ambassadors in as many schools as possible, both to serve as a voice for PPS at the individual schools, but also to take information from those individual schools and feed it back to Parents for Public Schools, so that we know what some of the challenges and successes are statewide. Again, we have a huge area to cover, and we feel that this is the most effective way of doing it. It's a relatively new program, and there can be more than one ambassador per school for sure. Of course, the thing with schools is you have children graduating and moving on, and so we're constantly looking to replenish the pool and expand. So. We have a fabulous website, thanks in part to Katie, one of our board members. Really, there are cards on the table. I encourage you to spend a few minutes at the website, read more about us. Really, please join as a member. We really need to increase our numbers. Again, there's no charge, and carry our little cards around with you. That's something that we ask ambassadors to do. And if you meet people who have some investment in the public school system whatsoever, hand out a card and ask them to learn more about the organization. We feel like the only way we're really going to be effective in changing the problems that face Hawaii's public schools is to really build a mass movement of parents and community members. And right now we're the only organization that's really trying to do that. Thank you.
Yep, it's middle schools here. There's 2 slides.
Right, so I'm substituting for Jeanette Macaluso today, we're really excited about just sharing a little bit about how our organization first really got some grassroots involvement in our community schools. So we started off thinking that, how do we engage families in that dialogue and keep families feeling as if they can still have a role to support their students, as their kids, as they're moving up along the grades. So we really thought that middle school was a time where families seemed to feel a struggle. How do I keep supporting and stay engaged with my kid, and also support the fact that they're becoming adolescents and that they're needing to get some autonomy, and then they're really pushing us away and saying, okay, Mom and Dad, I got this, I don't need you. So we thought that looking at the transition to middle school would be a really crucial time, not only for parents and their shifting roles, but also for what schools are asking students to do. And sometimes it's a scary time for families as they're looking at their kids growing up. They have a hard time imagining their little kids suddenly going to middle school. So we started offering tours of schools in the Honolulu area, and this was really a very beginning part of our organization's efforts. And we partnered with multiple schools in Honolulu District to offer school tours during the day. And this is kind of a different approach. So families could actually go, we worked with the schools and they provided, the principal would do some information, sometimes some of the other school staff would talk about their programs, they talk about homework policies, they would talk about grading, they would talk about school opportunities for kids for after school time. And families really felt welcomed. Very few families have that opportunity to sit in a smaller group and have those discussions and have a real tour of the school and see what was actually happening on campus. So we've expanded those school tours to other districts on Oahu and also to some neighbor islands, and so we're really excited about that. For families who weren't able to come to school tours, we decided to start offering transition nights, and we do a deeper dive into what does the transition look like to middle school. We have an adolescent We have an adolescent development night where we talk about changes in the brain and learning. Lois, who's a professor at the University of Hawaii in her other daytime job, and some of our other folks really provide an in-depth look at what is happening, why is middle school different from elementary school, how are kids progressing. We talk about the psychosocial changes as well as learning changes, and really invite parents to spend some time getting to know what's happening at the school and why middle schools are special. So our next area I'm going to talk about is our parent engagement program. You see we have this lovely banner here. We thought that we wanted to go beyond a one-time event on involving families, and we looked around for what are some other parent engagement curriculums that are out there. And our national organization had actually spent a lot of time really researching and coming up with a curriculum that we felt was really that in-depth parent leadership, parent overview of what are school systems and what is really happening. How do we give language and really become a more effective voice in supporting their children and having dialogues with the school. So our parent engagement program kind of covers some of these things. We had a grant from Weir, Hawaii, and we were able to do a pilot project, and we're piloting it on Hawaii Island. And we're very excited that we have two folks from Honeka'a School here to talk about their experiences, because we felt rather than us just share how great we think it is, it would be nice to hear from them. So as you can see, the purpose of the program really is to give parents some real in-depth experiences, help them kind of learn how to do some problem solving, identify areas at their school that they're concerned about, kind of think about what are the outcomes, what defines a successful student and a successful school, and really help them feel like they're invested in being able to make a difference for their children. So a component of this is that we go beyond just doing this in kind of intensive leadership and cohort development, and to actually also providing an opportunity to keep mentoring this cohort of parents for the rest of the school year. And to supplement the PEP program, we came up with the idea about the Family Academy, where families would come together in learning groups, identify strategies that they would like to see, consider activities at the school level that might impact on student learning and increase family involvement, and really raise the whole level of the work that was happening, and to really look at families as a resource, to look at families as an agent of change, not only for their own children, but overall as well. And so we have these ideas about giving them mini grants that they can apply for, so up to $1,000 to come up with a project at their school, and really continue to have them meet on a regular basis to really continue to develop those skills. So I'm going to introduce Susan Wood and have her come and talk to you a little bit. Susan was one of our parent facilitators and our folks who came to our intensive training this summer.
Good morning, and I'm Susan Wood from the neighbor island, and our project is at Honeka'a High School. But I want to go back to what this conference is really about, which is school empowerment. And you know, all the research shows that even with school empowerment, if we don't empower and engage our families, we're not going to have successful schools. And I kind of wanted to share some of that, because I think that's the crux under all of this, and the curriculum that PEP brought to us, is if the research shows that parent engagement starts at state level, complex level, school level, teacher level, community level, then we need to help them with skills, to build the skills to be able to be effective in each of those, domains, if you will. And so what we found through, Sue's generosity and Lois to extend it to our school is, first of all, they brought someone over from Mississippi to get us certified in training over 3 days. And here's another training, like, oh my God, 3 days, right? It was one of the best trainings I've had in my career, and I've had quite a few. And the light bulb was like, why didn't I get this when my kids were really young? And it's such a wonderful program because to me, it's the foundation for starting this skill set for our families. It teaches learning styles. It teaches what is a formative assessment, what's a summative assessment, what's data about, what's the accountability in our schools, and so much more. And it teaches it in a way that our families can understand, which is really, really awesome. And there's more modules to come, and what I love about it is that, the new ESSA, when the new ESSA takes over, we're going to get new modules. So the continuing and the learning will continue throughout for our families. And, really treating them as equal partners and engaged partners for public school education. And in our experiences after our first cohort, we met over like 27 hours. That was just the instruction piece. That wasn't the organizing piece of time. But over 27 hours bringing those folks together, we saw a major transformation on their learning and their skill set and how they can now not only help contribute to the school, but in their own life with their kids and the community. And so that was just so amazing and empowering. So I think that's been our experiences. We'll have a lot of time for question and answers, so we can leave some of that for them. And I want to introduce our principal, Rochelle Matsumura, who allowed us to took the risk of us being there and doing this and, not having all of the information at the very beginning, and took that risk, right? Just like what we heard this morning.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Real quick, I just want to share a little bit about why I'm here, and I want to thank Susan and the gang up here. But we're in Honoka'a, a lovely little town on the Big Island. You may know it because we're famous for our malasadas. And kids and parents get excited about athletics. You might have seen us on the news with our gym and a couple of incidents that has been happening. But when we look at that, we want to think about, okay, how can we get parents on board for other things, right? We want to make sure the whole child is there and the parent is right there alongside of them with us, working together for the same goal. So in Honoka'a, it's a little different school. We're 7 through 12, and we get kids from Pa'awilo, which is about 10, 11 miles away from us, all the way to Kauai High, which is more like 35, 40 miles away from us. So we have a gamut of socially economic differences in our school, from the very poor to the very rich that lives in Waimea. Super excited. Parents come in and out of our door. Some parents know what they want, and they mean it. They mean business when they're coming in. And some parents don't. So how do we get them involved for the right reasons? And we started off as a high school, not really knowing about what we could do. My experience in the elementary has been we had PCNC, parent involver. They would come in, they would talk to parents, they would get them on the same page, things would be great. In the high school, there's no such thing. So that was the first thing we did, is make sure that we get a PCNC. And we actually have two. They both live in our community. Super exciting. They both do different things. We want to make sure that person is there for parents. That was the #1 goal. The second thing is we have to come up with what's good, what's great about your school, making sure that people know that it's not just about athletics, it's not about all the bad things that are going on, but we have a lot of good, and promoting that. So our PCNCs are very technology savvy. We have a Facebook page, we have a great website, we also have a brand. So everything we do is based on our Dragon Pride brand. What does that mean to you as a student, me as administrator, parents, and teachers? And then we finally were able to get a little bit more focus with our parents, get a little bit training in, and that was what this program was about. It has brought together a wonderful distributive model with leadership, right? We work together, we come to the table for the same goals. It's no more of, I demand this, I want this, because this is related to my kid. It's how we celebrate all children at Honoka High Intermediate School. And I think that's super important because we're there for the same goals and we're very clear. The people that we work with are clear in our goals. It's about safety and security, number one. Number two, it's about learning. Are your kids learning? Where are they gonna go? College, career, wherever. How can we help that child be a good citizen that will hopefully come back to our community and make that difference? I only have 1 minute left. I know we're gonna be talking and asking questions, but those are the most important things, is getting the people there, having the same goals and working together, and always pursuing positive intentions. It's hard sometimes, but we work at that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate Ryder. I'm a board member of Parents for Public Schools. I am also very short. I am the recently hired art teacher at Monolith Elementary, where my daughter also attends as a kindergartner, and where both my brother and I attended when we were young. I'm going to talk today about policy advocacy. One of our goals of having the PEP program and the Parent Ambassador program is to take what they're doing and have them join us in taking direct action to influence policy in their schools, but also statewide. These actions include giving testimony online and in person at hearings and public meetings, participation in groups such as HE'e, the Hui for Excellence for Education, participating in rallies such as the upcoming HSTA rally, meeting directly with decision makers, and sharing policy issues on social media and other avenues. The key policy priorities that we are directing with these actions include increased teacher salaries. Over 10,000 students do not have a qualified teacher in the classroom in Hawaii. This is a statewide crisis, and to solve it, we need to elevate the position of teachers in our society. We need to pay our teachers a competitive wage so it's an attractive job for people to go into and to stay in. Reduce testing. We are wasting time and resources on toxic testing. It is harmful to teachers and students. Parents know it, the students know it, the community knows it, and the research shows it. We need to find a better way to assess our students and our schools. Whole child education. This is my personal kuleana. A single-minded focus on testing has meant a loss in the visual arts, music, and physical education to the detriment of physical, mental, and emotional health of the students. The only reason our school has these programs is because the principal has made it a priority and has integrated it so that the teachers can collaborate during the times that we have other teachers inside the classroom. But I've talked to so many teachers at other schools that say the only way that kids get to have those visual arts and music or PE is if they do it themselves, and they don't get the training to know how to do it in a way that's really robust and really encourages that deeper sense of learning. Expand public preschool for 4-year-olds. We need to fully fund the Executive Office for Early Learning, facility funding, air conditioning, maintenance and facilities, funding charter school facilities. This is basic stuff and it needs to happen. I could go on and on about these issues and others, such as Hawaiian education, after-school programs, paid family leave, and of course, family and community engagement at a statewide level. But I'm going to pass the floor back to Lois to discuss how these issues and others are reflected in the DOE strategic plan and the governor's blueprint.
Thanks, and I just wanted to note that these priorities are ones that came to us because of the input. We spent a couple years talking with people and asking for input on what they think are the top priorities for education and what we should advocate for. So now I'm going to talk about the governor's blueprint for education, and I have a handout that's at each table that just gives you an outline of what I'm going to be speaking about. But when we looked at the governor's blueprint for education and aligned it with what PPS families were telling us, there were 5 things that stood out. One is a goal that we agreed with. One is a goal of universal early learning. So I think that one is very clear that people would like everyone to have access to quality public preschools. The second thing is the concern of testing. This is probably the top concern that people constantly talk about. They feel their students are over-tested, that testing takes away from creative and engaging opportunities that their children could have, and creates a more boring and just bland environment. So we are very excited that the Governor's Blueprint is addressing these concerns by considering alternative assessments and suggesting that the state apply for the ESSA pilot program for authentic assessment. So ESSA is going to be selecting, the federal government is going to be selecting a handful of districts that will go forward and pilot test authentic assessments as an alternative to the standardized testing that's been used. Thirdly, we really appreciate the recognition of the social, emotional, and physical well-being of the whole child. So we're seeing people talking about the whole child, but sometimes whole child doesn't mean the same to everyone, but we appreciate that the Governor's Blueprint includes these aspects of our children's success. 4, we see a valuing and talk of empowering of educators, which I think all of us at this conference are excited to hear. And lastly, we are appreciative of an emphasis on engaging families as partners in education. And when we responded to an earlier version and said, it's not just school leaders that have to be engaging families, everyone has to engage families, from the person at the office to the teacher. And so they changed it. So I really appreciate that, and we do. But what we would also like to suggest for the Governor's Blueprint is including the arts and music. So we heard today from Tony Wagner about creativity as an important part of school success, and that's part of the whole child. So we'd like to see people be more explicit in talking about the arts. Secondly, a focus on attention on improving the learning environments. I'm not sure if the ESSA team felt it was beyond their purview, but families certainly feel, and students will tell you, that the school facilities need improvements, and including air conditioning or ways of making it more comfortable. The DOE strategic plan, when we looked at that, I would say too that the 2 documents, and they're worth going through. One is about 32 pages, the Governor's Blueprint in your handouts. And you can go online and look at the strategic plan, and it's just about 12 pages, I believe. The strategic plan is much narrower in scope. The blueprint was meant to be broad, looking at P and beyond, P20 to look preschool to college. So the DOE strategic plan emphasizes, and what we appreciate is it emphasizes engaging and empowering students through relevant and rigorous learning opportunities. So who wouldn't want that, right? So we're very excited about that. There's also a focus on creating a caring environment that nurtures students' emotional and physical well-being. So the DOE plan also talks about the whole child and talks about well-rounded education. And when we read that, this is what they're talking about. Third, there is talk of support of students' transition in adolescence, something that our organization has been concerned about and seen families exit public education at middle school. 4th, a valuing and celebrating of the teaching profession. 5th, identification of bright spots. What is working in public education? Our organization appreciates that because we feel that that public education tends to be painted very negative in our state. And so we know that there's very, very good education going on, excellent teachers, excellent schools, and we'd like to hear more about them. Finally, attention to the need for increased funding for education. That is also in the strategic plan. What we'd like to suggest for the strategic plan is inclusion of family and community engagement and the recognition of out-of-school time learning opportunities. So family and school engagement is it's literally the last line of the strategic plan, very small, and it says to be announced. It said that BOE wants to put this in. So that's something we would agree with the Board of Ed. Second, attention to an overemphasis of testing as a measurement of success. So the DOE plan doesn't talk about that at all. And lastly, similar to our comment on the blueprint, we feel that the arts, music, and vocational education as part of whole child and well-rounded education needs to be articulated. So I'm gonna ask people for their comments and questions, but before I do so, I want to encourage you again to become a member of Parents for Public Schools of Hawaii. You can join us through our website, or if you want to talk to us, we can get your information today and just enroll you. Thank you. So our board member, Deborah Vaughn Dobson, is going to facilitate the questions. Thank you.
Aloha. I'm Deborah Vaughn Dobson, and I'm eager to hear your thoughts at this important moment. I think a lot of us hearing Tony this morning and hearing about what Parents for Public Schools is doing are excited that with ESSA, there's more of an opportunity for us to look at how can teachers, how can parents, how can the community really guide education. So I'd love to ask for any questions you have about what Parents for Public Schools is doing, or about this important moment in time. Questions? And for the first few years, we've been more active on Oahu. It's been more difficult to reach out to the other islands, but we're making a big attempt to do that at this point. We found that we couldn't go to each school to do the middle school tours that we do. But we initiated those evenings for transition nights, and we found that transition nights have brought in parents and principals and teachers from many more schools than we could attend at the middle school level. So at the middle school tour level, maybe we've been doing, in the biggest years, 10 or so tours.
And I've been counting. I think we might have a presence at about 15 schools, although it really varies. We've done a lot of work at middle schools, but as you know, that's a short time, especially if it's intermediate. Then the families are gone and they're moving on to high schools. So we have ambassadors at how many schools? 15 schools, and then we have maybe it's 20. And we sort of have been open. I mean, it's like if people want us, then we'll be there. Because we're volunteers also, it sort of limits the amount of reach that we can do. But do you have suggestions or a comment?
I'm just thinking about, is there ways that we can help you get into more schools? And what might be some suggestions? You don't have to answer it now, but
Yeah.
what might be some suggestions of ways that people can help get parents connected with schools? And I guess the follow-up question too, most schools have some sort of parent group, whether they call it a PTSA or Friends of XYZ School or whatever. So do you interface with them at all? And if you do, to what extent?
So I can probably address that a little bit. In some of our opportunities where we may not have a formal relationship with folks. So for example, I participate in the Windward C4 group, which, and I'm helping them with some of their parent leaderships. So that's 10 schools in Windward, which we aren't really counting in the number of 15. Also, as we're doing some of our outreach and connecting with our families, so for example, even though we are identifying Honoka'a and Pia'au, we know that we've got families coming to our PEP programs that are actually coming from other schools as well. So there is a ripple effect. We also had Pahoa High was very interested and wanted to look at expanding our program. So right now PEP has a pilot program because it's funded specifically by Year Up to enable us to do this more in depth. I think the other piece is we're looking also at the Leeward Coast and really looking at becoming more involved. So we have some goals to continue to expand our programs. Does that kind of help a little bit? So some of them are formal, some of them are informal.
One of the ways we've also done it is through the PCNCs and making connections with them because they know their school best and the parents, that interface between the two. In terms of the PTAs and the PTOs and PTSAs, I don't know other people's experience at their schools, but my experience so far is it's mostly a fundraising thing. And so they're really focused on parents come out and they're like, okay, we're going to volunteer for the fun fair, and how are we going to make money so we can have some more, iPads in the school. And so one of our goals of the Parent Ambassador Program is to get parents and to help support them so that they can go to those meetings and start talking about these higher level issues. So I did that. I went to one of our PTO meetings and had my little business cards, and I said, hey, we want to hear from you, and there's this higher level of things going on. And so I had some parents who are talking to me afterwards and saying, okay, we're kind of interested in what's happening in education and what's going on, can you let us know? And so it's about building those relationships, which is this really time-intensive thing. And the Parent Academy also ties into that, and having that training so that they know what that means when you are talking about, you feel educated when they're able to go talk about policy issues, because it's really overwhelming in addition to.
And a way that people could help us is to identify family members who you think would be good ambassadors. So if you could ask people to sign up as an ambassador, to contact us through our website, or we can give our phone numbers also today. Just expanding our reach, and I think just more people becoming members, then we have a sense of what people want to do and how we can best help their schools.
Can I just say one thing? And one of the challenges is we don't have any full-time staff. I mean, how much money do we have now? We just raised $5,000 from Barnes & Noble fundraiser, but
Yeah, we have like 15,000.
15,000. So this is really just people doing this on their own time. I've worked with nonprofits, and if there's one full-time or part-time staff, what you can do is incredible. What you can do with parents who have full-time jobs is a little limited. So we're doing I think a pretty great job based on our limited time and resources. And at some point maybe we'll talk about the possibility of hiring a part-time or full-time staff if we could get that funded, and then that person could work 20 or 40 hours a week on reaching out better to more schools.
A good start would be to sign up. If you're not already a member of Parents for Public Schools, just go and click the join button on our website, and then you'll get notices of what we're doing. But also, parents that you know, or teachers you know, or anyone you know in the community can add their comments of what their concerns are, and we keep gathering that, and that helps us to grow. Also, a lot of our board members go out to all kinds of community events that are happening. If you have events in your school and you'd like to have someone from Parents for Public Schools come to it, we'd be happy to share any of the information we have from our work, and that's a way for us to grow and maybe get more going at your school. Yes?
Yes. So I know that your parent organization, the Parents for Public Schools, had as one of its core values equity, encouraging parents who were less included in school activities because of their ethnicity or their income status. They really focused on helping them become more involved in public schools and having a greater voice. And that's a benefit of the blueprint and the strategic plan, is they're finally focusing on how to bring up the performance and the outcomes for all kids. So I think it would be helpful for you folks if you stressed equity as well in your, because often families whose kids are receiving special ed, or families whose kids have ELL services, they're separated from the other parent populations as well. So it's segregation all the way down the line.
That's a great point, and that really is a major motivating force for Parents for Public Schools. And we think that one of the reasons that a lot of parents like to come out to our tours is that the tour is sponsored by Parents for Public Schools, not by a school in particular. And some of our parents who have been less privileged economically or whatever have more reticence about attending school events. Having the regional events that we have about the transition from elementary to middle school is another place where we think we can help with that equity and support parents and support their voice. But you're right, we should stress this, and it's greatly important. Other questions? Are we near our ending time? Do we have-
Was there anything you guys want to add, since we might have another minute?
I guess I wanted to piggyback on what Susan Rockwell was saying. In our engagement program, the families that were drawn to us really had some concerns about their kids. And that's why they joined. They didn't just say, hey, I want to be involved in this. One was having, their child was having social emotional issues. The other one was just being diagnosed with ADHD. We had another one who was on the spectrum. We had another family had a young child with a speech impediment, and they were angry, they were upset, and they needed something to grasp onto. And these are the families that actually, came forward for this academy, and it's amazing that, we didn't even get to what the SPED law is, any of that, but it was like this was the foundation for learning, and just with that information alone, they just grew and transformed in their knowledge. And it's interesting to see that even now, when if there's a hiccup or something happens, that they're funneling it through the PEP folks, through us to kind of help them brainstorm, like we talk about community practice, right? Coming together and learning about, what does this mean? Are there other resources for us outside of the school? Maybe it's not the school's purview. Maybe I'm missing something. So, that was really an eye-opener for us, because it wasn't, we had families that were struggling that came forward and devoted their time in this 27-hour curriculum, and they already had a whole bunch of stuff going on in the community, because they're involved in 4-H, they're involved in different things, but they took the time and they made it a priority. Because they felt that it was worth it. So I just wanted to share that we had those families with us in this program.
Could you talk about the problem?
The what? Yeah, and so one of the things after the curriculum is challenging the families to think about how they can help either their child through what they learn, the community, anything in the community that they want to help with, or the school. And we're going through the brainstorming session, because our first session, learning sessions, was in September and October, and then we started meeting monthly in November. So they were going through all this, what can we do? They started getting really excited, and they were aware of a few events coming up, so they volunteered for that. But they were really, we were talking about our community and the poverty level in our community, and our kids' social and emotional well-being, and how can we get them to learn when they don't have food at home, right? I mean, basic necessities here. And so, I know the SEC, we've been talking about, because we have a champion here as a principal, talking about, how can the school community council rally around a project. And again, we were just brainstorming, and food pantry came up. And as we were discussing this in the academy, one of the families said, well, I can wrap my head around that. And so, there's all these different things that now they want to step up and help the school, which they never thought of. They just really called in for, hey, I need to get, money for sports or the kids, or, so now it's just taking it to another level of the support that we can get with our families in the schools and in our community.
Ray had a question.
Yeah.
I'm going to just add on something. What I've seen over the years is whenever, I was in the DU for 33 years and I'm in the College of Ed, but whenever a parent says, I'm just a parent, underscores that you are key to the well-being of your child, and we may have information that can help support you. But to underscore, people go into education because they want to make a difference. But we need to remind parents that they always make an enormous difference.
Great point. And listening to Tony this morning say that the stress that children are under actually eats away at their brains, we know that the parents can help with nurture, but there's a role for parents for public schools and for all of us to help those families to be nurtured themselves and to reduce stress, but to support those students so that the stress is less. And I think this really hits your equity point, that in the areas where there is greater need, the stress is greater. The poverty is a tremendous drain on families and students. And so the hope at Parents for Public Schools is that we find a way to take resources and spread them out and give support that helps to make the parents feel the strength they should feel in their importance in the role, and help to guide them and give them information that helps them to interact with the school. Katie, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Somebody back. Ray had a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I could just kind of spur the thought that I can share with you. But first of all, I have to commend your entire group. I think the parent advocacy group, groups like yours, are second only to the culture of the teacher and the student relationship that is in the classroom today. So thank you for that. In the spirit of volunteerism right now, you can feel it in this room. As we go forward, though, the whole idea of the EIH school empowerment, we spoke about that very particularly. Is one of the projects that we're taking on is what we call a economic transparency study. In other words, if you're going to tell us from the POE side of things that X amount of every education dollars is going to this, then you got to be able to prove that. When all of us that used to be in the POE, I mean, one of those first litmus tests that I would apply to everything, do I have the confidence of the parents? 9 times out of 10 in some of the disciplines that I've been working in, that answer is no. So as you heard Governor Ige, you heard Lance mention making the voices heard in this budget process that we're going through, I think the adversarial relationship right now between our legislature and the budget that is either proposed or presented, in other words, trying to make it through the process, there's that lack of confidence that's going to allow the legislatures to then fund what the department says it needs. The news. The Council of Revenues for the state has kind of projected a flat projection. What does that mean as it trickles down into the funding of the Department of Transportation, Department of Education, Department of Health, is that there's not going to be a lot of excess. So when you look at some of these programs that we have to fund, especially in the, if we're all going to say, okay, let's empower our schools, there has to be an inward look at the department's spending of the current dollar that exists. And I can tell you, in fact, I can promise you that there is dollars in that budget that are not being spent effectively. And the only way that we're going to be able to fund a lot of the programs, a lot of the initiatives, a lot of the new school facilities, for instance, you're going to have to take some of those revenue dollars that are already in place, reallocate them differently, rather than spending them wastefully, which is what we have been doing. I mean, the governor said in his last State of the State that he was going to air condition 1,000 classrooms by year end. To date, there's 46. Most of those are portables. And you got to ask yourself, okay, there was $100 million allocated for this project. You could have handed that $100 million to anybody that would have an idea of how to do that in a thinking outside the box kind of way. You're never going to get to 1,000 because even in an optimum system, that's just a tough climb. But we'd have been doing a lot better than 46. And that's because the same processes are in place that would otherwise spend that $100 million on it. And you can look at that template or that limits for any other of the components of delivery of education right now. So where a long diatribe to get to my point is that I think a parent group, to your point, again, that voice, you know, when parents would testify, or if I would speak to a parents group, you know, that's almost like going to church and being scolded by your priest. I mean, you're not doing your job if they're not happy and you don't have the confidence of that group. So I guess I would advocate for you folks, and we can help in any way that we can, is make your voices heard in this fiscal transparency piece, because, you know, we can talk about education, we can talk about facilities, we can talk about all of the other components that touch the education of that child in the K-12 system. But it's not just about the money, it's all about the money. And I don't think we're being given the absolute clarity on where every cent of that education dollar is being spent.
Okay, so a couple of things. I'm sure that there are dollars that are not being spent as perfectly as they could be. But any large system, some of that is going to happen. And I agree with you, that needs to happen. We need to have fiscal quickly to not waste a single cent, because we don't, and we understand that we have this budget limitation. But the problem is that we need to think, we're expecting so much out of our schools and so much out of our teachers and so much out of our students. and we're not supporting them in the ways that they really need to be supported. And we're not really listening because we're saying, maybe, I'm sorry, I might be just kind of going out on a limb here, but I'm getting this feeling that we have this expectation to do the best with every single cent we have instead of looking at
I think that many of us at Parents for Public Schools and at large in the state feel that more money is needed for teacher salaries. We need to elevate the role of teachers. We think that maybe too much money is going into assessment, and sometimes the students are on the computers being assessed when they could be on the computers exploring and building their minds. So transparency, so we can really look at what is spent how, is critical. And if we can get information from you and share it with parents, that will be tremendous. But there will be a lot of support from our organization for making sure that no matter how much is wasted, that more is invested in our children and in equity and in teachers' role.
You both made the point very well, actually, so thank you for that. But in the spirit of, again, fiscal transparency as it relates to school empowerment,
Could you speak up a little bit?
you both made my point, first of all, so thank you for that. But again, in the spirit of fiscal transparency as it connects to school empowerment, that's what we champion. In other words, that principle, that leadership at that school, in that specific community, with its population of students based on whatever demographic that is, knows best how to spend those dollars.
Right.
So that's what we're advocating.
One last question, and then I think we need to wrap up. Right there.
No, I think she brought up a really good point later when she said it's not the Starbucks, it's the healthcare you're paying for. So, I mean, that is a good thing to bring up, because is it really that the schools aren't spending their money well, or is it that they're being overcharged by, Pearson, who has a huge bevy of lobbyists in Congress? Companies like that have had a massive impact on Common Core and the decisions that went behind it. And I'm not saying Common Core is bad, but that it has been heavily influenced by people who are primarily in it to make money. So, I mean, we do need to address those things. Maybe not necessarily through Parents for Public Education, but in some way we do need to address those questions. So I think that's something that I know you had a hard time articulating, but I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents there. My actual issue is that you guys keep saying that we need to pay our teachers more, and I agree, but I have a quibble with that, in that, what the start is that we need, good teachers, we need more teachers, and then you jump straight to that means we need to pay teachers more. I agree with that, but I think there's a little problem with the logic there. From what I'm given to understand, Japan does not pay their teachers noticeably more than America does, yet while America has constant teacher shortages and constant issues with teachers not being qualified, Japan has an excess of trained and qualified teachers. They actually have more than they can use. So I would like to suggest that maybe it's not just about how much we pay teachers, it's about things like the social status of teachers, the amount of respect teachers are getting from the society at large and the students in the classroom and the parents and also their own administrators. So this is a huge thing. We don't have the power to go to Hollywood and say, hey, could you stop making movies where every kid hates their homework and their teachers and no kid actually loves school, and maybe encourage our kids to not have such a negative view. I mean, I would love to do that, but I don't have the power to do anything in Hollywood, and I don't have the money. But maybe we can start at home with just talking to parents and saying, hey, could you encourage your kids to remember that their teachers are human and that they have their own troubles and their hard times, and maybe be nice to your teachers? It's a start, right? It's a start that we can all work on right here.
Great point. I think we all want to see the role of teachers enhanced. At the same time, we want to see the pay enhanced so that people can afford to do that important role. Thank you. Thanks to everybody for attending, and please go and sign up if you're not already a member and encourage your friends. Thank you.